I got too many games. I got at least try them all. This is my first impression backlog death march here. We've got raid. Check preferences. Yeah. All look good. Back. Start. Ooh. Is there an auto voicer?
Self-voicing enabled.
Yeah.
Attendant, beddings, please. Attendant, passengers departing at 3 Stones, arrival in 10 minutes, be ready to depart. 10 minutes. 36 hours of railway travel from the city turned my berth in a sleeping car into a tiny home. Here's the code peg, here's where I keep my bag. I pick up the cup, I walk to the end of the carriage, pour myself some boiling water, then make some tea. Unpack one of the boxes with plain, slow spoiling food, eat slowly, stare out the window. There's a tablet with a couple of earbuds in the second bag. I tidy up the bed, I turn on a movie, but don't watch for too long, better to get some sleep, save more time. You can recharge the battery a bit in the lavatory at night. Reading a book is an option too, but my car is the last and the shakiest, letters jump up and down before my eyes and my head starts to hurt. Last car. Much more last than I wanted it to be. I try not to think about it. Train passes the town of 3 Stones once every 48 hours, every 2 days you have a chance to leave it. No one ever does. Train brings in the post, a handful of packages is swiftly unloaded, and once again stirred up ravens land back at their usual spots. I share my place in the car with a nice elderly lady who kept trying to feed me some of her homemade food as we rode. Kept urging me to help her. I can't eat this all by myself, she said. My stop is much later than yours, no good to waste food. I kept refusing only for the first 8 hours. For one thing, she was indeed a small eater, for another, my bags came across as a pilgrim's satchel not only by their look. For my journey I only managed to buy some Instaporridge sachets and a couple of chocolate bars, the last of which I shared with her at the end of the said 8 hours. Apart from us two, there is also a man. When he learned where I am from, he immediately stopped talking to me and, seeing that the lady isn't bothered by that, to her as well. When we share a meal, the lady asks me about my life in the village. I tell her that I have been away for a long time, I'm not even sure if I'm remembered. Probably not. I left when I was 16. Was taught to read, write, and that was pretty much it. No parents, but when I was orphaned the head of our church took me in, let me live at the temple, and then sent me to study at the expense of our commune. My future had to be the brightest. At least, that's what I thought. Suddenly, the man chips in from his upper berth. Passenger, you people all march in lines to pray. He barely spoke before. Kept to himself the whole time, brooding over his newspaper in which he solved every crossword puzzle since he boarded the train 20 hours ago. Some of them twice. His question sounds rude and the lady looks reproachfully at him, but me, I'm smiling. Blessed are ye, when men shall revile you, and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely, for my sake. Rejoice, and be exceeding glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. This was the first thing I was told before departing to the seminary. Well, the pews are all lined up, so. He dismisses my attempt to make a joke. Passenger, you believe in God. Seems that he milked his newspaper dry. Well, he should have known better. Peddlers get on board only on the stations close to the city. Now he could either abide or pester the fellow passengers. He went with the latter. I tell him that I do believe. I am still smiling, but this question is much more complicated than the previous one. The faith is tested not when you meet bad people outside the church. Not even when bad people happen to be in the commune. The hardest test of faith is to meet people who don't need the strain, or effort, or the faith, to be kind. Then you must force yourself to keep believing that the whole world lieth in wickedness. Convince yourself, that the only good comes from God, and we are the only one of God. The only one who have him. Thus says the book, right? The world is much easier to understand when people call you a bigot, rubbing it in your face. So I keep smiling. Attendant, arrival in 5 minutes, be ready to depart, passenger. This time the attendant shakes me by the shoulder exclusively. I don't have a lot of things to pack, I've been up for almost all night anyway. The train arrives at 5:50 a.m., so I gathered my belongings and dozed off, leaning against a carriage wall. I nod to the attendant and hastily grab my things. When I was leaving the city, my boxes and satchels looked like ones of a homeless, next to the bright vinyl bags of others. But here, in the land of the ice and snow, none of those left, only the owners of the same patchy baggage as mine. I wanted to say my goodbyes to the elderly lady, but she was asleep. Shame. I felt like I didn't express my gratitude well enough. I would leave something for her, but I had nothing. So be it. Welcome your soon-to-be deaconess, 3 stones, here I come. I was the only one to get off, the attendant didn't even need to help me get my travel bags down, there was barely something left after we ate all the food. I noticed someone peek out of the train and pass a long package to a girl on the other side of the platform. Who is she, I wonder? Station master gave the green light, and the train started to move, carrying away both the kind lady and the man with his newspaper. The seat I took probably still bears my warmth, and the attendant haven't yet cleaned my glass. The station clock said 3 minutes to 6, I grabbed my bags and started down the known unknown stairs in the direction the girl disappeared a second ago. Hag, what are you? Here's to your lost marbles, Gran. Again. The girl's leather coat is sprayed with rivets used to decorate cheap handbags, rivets are shaped into words King Diamond. No idea what that means. Hag, to hell with you. The hag spits in her general direction. Hag, what are you? She pokes her stick at me, narrowing her eyes with suspicion. The girl turns on a spot apparently, she hadn't noticed me. The front of her jacket is all patches too, part of them visibly hand-sewn. Creator, Anthrax, Slayer, Celtic Frost. I turn to the hag, the corner of my eye still tracing the lines of inscriptions, the ones I can decipher, at least. Pauline.
Sure, that works.
Pauline, Pauline. Hag, doesn't ring. Whose are you? Why are you even up, Gran? It's 5:30, go hit some snooze buttons. One more figure tears upstairs from below, tumbling and tucking in the lumberjack shirt on the go. Another girl. Missed it? Overslept. Cool your tits, I gotcha. The poster board girl unwraps her package and it splits into 2 poorly wrapped brown paper bundles. She passes one to the newcomer. The hag switches her attention the same way, far from calming down. Hag, did you steal my key? The girl in the jacket wraps her half of the package back up. It's the 3rd key already, Gran. Don't you think it's enough for 1 week? Hag, stole it. Stole it? You mongrel, you dog slut. The latecomer shrugs. Her sleeves are unbuttoned and I notice a couple of long scratches on her arms. Could have been worse. I plundered half of her house and a dog on top. Did put back the dog later. I'm out. Jacket girl slips the package under her arm and rushes down the stairs. I'm Laura. I remember you. Lemme give you a hand with the bags. Pauline, they're not that heavy. But I appreciate the help. The thought of being left alone is terrifying. The hag by the stairs kept blaming all 3 of us for larcenies, each new one more horrifying than the last. Before the distance finally hushed her voice, she was eager to throw us to the wolves, I think. We walk in silence for a time. Pauline, much changed since I was gone? Laura, same old song mostly. But we got a steady supply of internet now. Laura, the bandwidth's as tiny as a rat's butt. She casts a glance at me, but I pretend I didn't hear. Laura, but it's something. Obviously uncomfortable, she rattles on to drown what's been said in more words. Laura, compared to the years prior, it's like a welcome to the new age. Laura, could barely get a ping on a wireless before, with mountains all around and whatnot. Laura, sure, a TV was an option, but it's like the broadcast remained the same for the last 100 years. Laura, I mean, it couldn't be that hard to slip in some news about how the world's going, but somehow even those are like we're here, and the rest is up in the clouds, with Obama on top, or whoever they let on top now. Laura, everything is up in the clouds, with us lumbered on the ocean floor, catching echoes of people talking on the cruise ships with our sonars. Laura, at least the internet lets you choose the news. Still, with the YouTube half dead, her cheeks turned slightly pink anyway. Thankfully, the church isn't far. Pauline, well, let's hope the rat's butthole gets wider. Why did I say that? I just wanted to make a joke, cheer her up and show we're on the same side, express my gratitude for not letting me feel so alone upon arrival. She froze on the spot, turning the deepest shade of scarlet. I froze as well, feeling the blood pumping in my ears. Am I that bad around people now? What a Freudian slip. We stared at one another in terror for an unbearably long while. Stacia, Pauline. I turned around and saw Stacia rushing towards us, hands waving. Don't think I ever loved her more than right now. Pauline, this is me. Laura, ah. Good. I'm gonna go then. Laura, it was nice to meet you. Both me and her lost our voices all at once. She gave me my bag back and we walked away in the opposite directions, stiff-legged, trying not to glance back. Stacia, Pauline. What's the plan? To the church? To Judith? And then? Wanna come over? Stacia, I need to drop by somewhere real quick, but I'll be back before you know it. Stacia, come on. Hungry. Let me take that bag. Becoming the center of Stasia's attention was as good as being caught up in a whirlwind. She took all my bags and rushed to the church, swinging them madly and non-stop talking to me, to them, or maybe to herself. At some point she noticed me falling behind, looped around and kept spreading the word of an impending breakfast to the existence around us. When we reached the communal apartments, she didn't think twice to carry all my belongings to her house. Stacia, I made some pasta carbonara. Stacia, you need a quail egg for it. But we don't have any quails in here, too cold for them and I guess they need fields too. And we don't have fields. Stacia, you think I wouldn't search some fields to find a quail egg? Stacia would. She loved cooking since she was a child, and even went alone in the woods once, searching for the berries absolutely required for some recipe. The whole town was worried mad by the time she came back 2 days later, happy as a dog with 2 tails, with a full basket. I wouldn't be surprised if she strangled a bear to get her hands on them. Or rather, she befriended one, and it single-handedly filled the said basket, cried its eyes out when Stacia was leaving and made her promise to come back someday. Pauline, can't you add a regular one? Stacia went silent and stopped, staring blankly in front of her. The bags in her grip swung with momentum. I babbled and waved my hands in panic. Pauline, of course you can't, what a nonsense, right? Pauline, the taste is different and chicken eggs don't match. Stacia, exactly. They don't match. She unfroze and continued her cheery walk as if nothing happened. Stacia, guess what I did? Pauline, I'm sorry, Stacia. I'll be back with you in a second. In a tall doorway of the church towered the gaunt figure of Judith, our wise and just leader. Judith gave me the key from the room I used to live in. The usual questions, dry wishes for me to settle back down to living in 3 stones. She took care of me when I was left alone in the world, so who am I to ask for more? She was understandably busy. The harvest is coming. And my ordination too. I unpacked my travel bags. Tossed my seminary uniform in the closet, along with a few black floor-length skirts I used to wear to the city when leaving on teachers' errands. Oh, I was a disciple of high standing. Best in my class. That was the time when they assigned a troubled student to share a room with me, and my life took a strange turn. There was a single bag left unpacked on the bed. I emptied it in one go, touched the lining and immediately withdrew my hand. Is it greasy? I whipped the air above my fingertips. No, of course not, I'm just imagining things, the canvas is cool to the touch, that is all. That's all. Someone knocked on my door. I opened it to see an ethereal creature waiting outside, a translucent-looking young lad with his hair completely white and his skin so fair that the sunlight painted it pink, streaming through. Was he there before, when I left? Young lad, Sister Superior Judith asked you to prepare the word of for the evening service. His voice was a whisper, barely audible, so I had to hold my breath and tilt my head to make out the words. Young lad, she is busy and is highly counting on you. Pauline, of course. He stepped out of the room backwards, staring at the floor. The word it is, then. I sat down at my desk and opened the book. Nothing else to do anyway. After speaking to the head I came over to Stacia, who stuffed me to the point I could barely walk and stacked me up with the amount of food enough to last a week. It was clear she desperately wanted to talk, but the event to come made her run around like a headless chicken. After all, the harvest feast was her day in the limelight. The one and only day of the year when the luxurious meal isn't considered a sin of gluttony. On the contrary, illustrious and tasty food represented community's ardent praise to the Maker. This day her deeds turned the eternal bleak of the communal life into something shining and vivid, something of Stacia herself. My attempts to make myself useful to her were all in vain. Stacia knows I can't cook, and to be honest, even letting me hold a sharp object can be dangerous. I try to console myself with thoughts that I hath chosen the good part of Mary, not Martha. Still, sometimes when I hear breathtaking smells from her kitchen, I can't help but ponder about how useless I am. Upon coming back home I found out I can't put myself to anything. There was still one movie I haven't seen left on the tablet, that new one, The Revengers or something like that. I may have remembered the title wrong. New York City, Superstars, Superheroes. A thing from outer space, from the place up in the clouds with Obama on top. Word has it, we now have a steady supply of the internet, not here, though, somewhere down the valley, in one of those warm houses. I should probably try to make friends with someone out there. With one of those girls I met today. I let out a sigh. Today's word will be of, sin of lasciviousness. I shuddered. Many of the seminarian girls hailed from villages as remote as 3 stones. The ones where people still check if a girl saved herself for the wedding. That didn't stop them at all, there were other options. A mouth and... I open my eyes, wide awake in an instant. My heart is racing as if after a nightmare. The room looks blue, blue shadows hide in corners, single window casts a pale blue, frame-crossed rectangle on the ceiling, ghostly clawed paws swing back and forth inside it. I'm scared. At first I'm not sure why. A quiet, rhythmic slopping rolls over the night silence. The sound is lone and so alien, it comes from her bed and dampens the steady human breathing. And I hold my breath too, trying not to move a limb, afraid to look in her direction. Slowly, ready to shut my eyes any moment now, I turn my head. She lies on top of her blanket, on her side, facing my bed, her knees bent, elbow used as a pillow under the unnaturally bent back head. Her mouth is wide open, her eyes shut. You could mistake her for a sleeper if her chest and shoulders weren't shaking. They move along with the slops and slurps, painting a picture, and I am curiously tracing the lines of her body. A strand of hair crossed her bare neck like a sickle, an elbow flutters up and down behind her back, legs tied with a colorful stripe of her panties. And then I realize, what am I looking at?
Okay, so I think I better give my synopsis here. It might get to might get to a spot that I probably can't put on YouTube. So that seems like an interesting story so far. Obviously, I haven't had any kind of options yet, so don't really know what kind of uh, paths this might go along, or it could just be straight up, linear, whatever. I think the same company did another, or same group did another game called Life Size. I want to say it's the same group. I could be completely wrong there, but whatever. I'm just gonna throw this out there, without double checking. Anyway, so yeah, this might be a bit spicier of a thing, but so I might not be able to really put too much of it on YouTube, but I can at least put this much on YouTube, and yeah, it seems interesting. Obviously, you haven't really gotten deep enough into it to give it a real good go of it, but yep, there you go. Now let's see how far we can go.
I turn away in fear and shut my eyes. A little too late, slopping sounds are ringing in my ears, the image of her shame burned onto my retina. It's not allowed, we're not allowed to. I should have started tossing about to fright her away, to make her stop, but my limbs became heavy, nailing me to the bed. Slop. Slop. Slop slop slop. I can hear her speed up and breathe in through gritted teeth, almost a moan. Why did I wake up at such a bad time? Ragged breaths became rapid and muffled, the bed springs creaked. Did she turn to lie on her belly? I let myself imagine her hand fluttering up and down over a pale round butt cheeks, clutching. She sobbed one last time, especially loud. And everything went silent. I laid on my back, clutching the blanket and listening to the thumping of the blood in my ears. It felt like an eternity. Then the cloth rustled against the skin. I couldn't see, but heard her roll over to her back, prop herself against the pillow, rising her hips and pulling panties back up where they belong. The bed gave out another creak, deep and long one. She was turning from side to side, making herself comfortable, tucking the blanket. The silence then changed to a deep breathing of one asleep, and only then I had the courage to move. What would I do with things I now knew of her? Idle hands are the devil's workshop, as one wise man from the East used to say. Well, today's word will be of. I dozed off without noticing it. All the worries and the sleepless nights stroked me down at last. I fell from the sky and crash-landed in a field near the river Eder. I saw you cry beneath the dripping trees.
Yeah? Okay.
I wasn't asleep for long. When I awoke, the sun was still high enough, and the evening service awaited. I wasn't even going to be late. I rubbed my eyes and checked the clock, despite the urge to check the calendar. Didn't I get off the train today? I thought that if I'll get an early start, so would the sermon, and the day will finally come to a long-awaited end more quickly, but that only resulted in me being the first to come and endlessly wait inside. The church slowly filled with people, coughing and shuffling. They took their seats in silence, rarely dropping as much as a single bit of welcome. From now on my seat was on the opposite side of the pulpit. I was a laywoman no more. I held the book with today's written sermon tucked between the sheets. Finally, the head came out and took the place at the pulpit. All conversation stopped, everyone raised from their seats. Judith, Ode of Resurrection 763, I want to follow you. Sister Judith looked up. At the top level, in front of the choir, stood the translucent boy from before. He threw his hands in the air and the choir started to sing. Dim light of a dim day was streaming through the T-shaped hole in the wall right on the cantor boy, so weightless, almost dissolved by the beams. People dismally stared into their hymnals and moved their lips, repeating the words, heads hanging low. Old microphones used by the choir crackled with heavy static, making me wince. Sleepless night gave me a headache. I remember this image since my childhood. Gray people enter the gray room. Permanently tragic tones, hushed voices, as if you are stuck at a perpetual funeral where no one considers finally burying the dead. No loud voices, no wearing bright clothes. You're just an empty shell of lifeless skin and bone. Less than 72 hours ago I was surrounded by another world. It seemed like yesterday. Sure, seminary rules, sure, the fence, but behind that fence were wide streets, cars, dazzling light boxes, vividly colored clothes. The music filled the air. You could walk into a mermaid cafe and taste a heavenly tender cheesecake. A cheesecake, a word from an alien language. Here, on the ocean floor it sounds like a public offense. I wonder if Stacia could make one? I should tell her about it. But the precise recipe for the New York cheesecake as it's served in the Mermaid Cafe requires using Philadelphia cheese, and Stacia would be upset over the fact she can't get any. It would be useless to try to convince her to whip up something by herself. For a couple of days she'd be wandering aimlessly, beating herself up over it, crying and eating pastries. And then go on complaining she's plumping up. I, for what it's worth, think that she looks as tasty as none of her dishes could ever hope to be. And I got distracted again. I glanced over the people once more. The front pew was taken by two identical girls, dressed in all black. Their mesmerized eyes were drawn to the cantor boy. Beams of cold light seeped through the hole and tangled in their hair. They resembled a thistle, that one wild stem of weed with purple flowers, springing every so often among the withered northern grass. Their lips were moving too, but it wasn't the ode they were whispering. The closer to the end of the psalm, the tighter is my grip on the book and the sermon. Last verse is almost done, and that means I need to stand up and say the word. Sure, the church is small, sure, most of those people know me well, but 6 years have passed. Their looks are pointed at me, seemingly friendly, but it has been so long since I've been here. And I wasn't a pious follower for the whole time. But we need to get started. Pauline, the harvest is coming and you can already hear festive smells from Stasia's kitchen. People began to smile. Men with sallow faces, their knobbly root-like hands on their knees, women withered by wind and daily life, even the shrewish hags, everyone seemed to love Stacia. To start with her was the right call. Everything is going well. Pauline, the day of the harvest feast is the time we accept everything the Maker gives us. Pauline, but we ourselves are the branches made to yield fruits, and the Maker casts us forth and takes us away, or purges us, that we may bring forth more fruit. Pauline, and today the word will be of fertilizers. Pauline, our gratefulness is the sap that nourishes us. It fills our veins and shows us how plenty are the gifts the Maker gives us. Pauline, without the gratefulness our eyes are closed and our hearts are hardened, and we are unable to do good as well as receive good and be grateful for that. Scare the audience first, then show it a sliver of hope for the best. A safe strategy. But I didn't want to scare these people, I wanted to see those root-like hands relax a bit, to flush some color into the tired faces. To make things look better. Pauline, amen. Everyone, amen. Stasia's kitchen was filled with armfuls of flowers for the next day feast. The cask of special festive wine is probably already rolled out in the cellar. Sure, if you want to watch a movie, you'll need to wait a week now. But maybe there's something worthy of love even here, in Three Stones, a place beyond the borders of civilization. Even the head, whose face always bore the same worried expression, seemed to soften a bit after my sermon. Judith, Ode of Resurrection 660, O grateful hearts, come to Father's house. The cantor stood up, a halo of sunlight settled down on his head of white hair. He rose his hands, but instead of a psalm, the horrible noise of a music fills the church.
This is definitely music.
It was as if the nails were going to shoot out of the wooden floor. An old audio rack was rattling, turning everything into a nightmare. One of the men darted to the side, following the cables, and the music stopped with a crack. Either plug was pulled out or the speakers simply exploded. Women's faces, barely free of their ever mournful lines, were dark with ire. Clutching his chest with his hands, terrified cantor was glancing from the head to the choir. He looked like he was going to faint from fear. There was a sound of struggle, and someone was pulled from the choir steps, back first the poster board girl from earlier, in the same leather jacket. She was silent and didn't fight back, just kept grinning like mad. She was dragged through the main doors and pushed out. Brain-dead cattle. And the door was shut. Judith, our Maker is generous and merciful, but there will always be the ones who resist his ordinance. Judith, but we are strong and will praise him no matter what. I saw the poster girl standing outside, alone. She couldn't see anything through the window, of course, however murky was the evening sky, it was still brighter than the insides of the church. Her leather jacket, crushed by men, was hanging lopsidedly from her shoulders, face hidden behind the curtain of tangled hair. The lace on one of the heavy boots was untied. For some time she stood still, then made a sharp rude gesture and turned around to leave, stepped on the lace and fell. Someone threw the audio tape through the window, aiming at her. She wanted to pick it up, only to see it shattered. Slowly getting back up, the poster girl wandered off to the valley, trying to get the torn-off patches back to their places. Same way they dragged you out. Neatly, but sure to make the image to sink in. I saw the emptiness thicken around you, saw people trying to keep their eyes away from you. They found a lot of curious things among your belongings. Silence fell, and the head stepped forth. People, still agitated from what just happened, stopped exchanging words and glances, granting all their attention to her figure, towering over the pulpit like a monument. Judith, if the devil hates you, God is pleased. Blessed are ye, when all manner of evil is said against you falsely, for Maker's sake. The context was slightly different, though. Judith, if the devil strikes you, he is afraid of you. Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Judith, tomorrow is an important celebration and an event, important for the commune. And we won't allow the devil to thwart our plans. Judith, Psalm 158, rejoice, O faithful brothers. The cantor put his hands in the air, and a discordant choir of people joined in a song, with an adamant determination to rejoice to spite the devil. It felt somewhat caddish. I came back home exhausted, dropped on a bed and stared into the ceiling. I felt hungry, so I got up and took some food from the bags that Stacia handed to me, boiled eggs stuffed with fish, homemade wurst, beet and walnut salad. She had things to worry about, other than me, she's busy with the celebration. My celebration, mindlessly chewing on the food I crossed the room destined for me to spend, the rest of my life. This is what my life is going to be? Murky room, 3 steps wide, 5 steps long, overlooking the mist. With unstoppable mold and creaky steps? A freezing outhouse, get up at 6, a prayer before bed, awaiting the death that will clear the gray fog over the trail that you wander at last. Eternity is just another game. From this point of view, the incident with the poster girl was a gap in the clouds. If I decide to watch something that's left on the tablet, the piece of the distant world I took with me will dwindle. As if eating through a last loaf of bread in the lean year, convincing yourself that you took a tiniest bite. Putting a niblet in your mouth and watch it melt away until nothing is left. To my own surprise, I found a TV in the room. Probably was brought here as a good riddance from some dead old lady. It was covered with a clean-laced linen cloth, a heart-touching gesture, and seemed to be even more surprised than I when I turned it on. It blinked its hazy eye and produced a reasonably colorful image. A recording of the Brahms concerto from the Philharmonic Hall was airing, followed by the local news. Newsreader, with the author's identity concealed, an expected possibility after the spread and growth of the World Wide Web. Newsreader, the overflow of anonymous complaints tripled over the last year, which resulted in the unanimous assembly decision to enforce a major inspection of the whole region. Ah yes, human rights. Quite a trend nowadays, I heard. Somewhere not here. Newsreader, the raid over the local villages, settlements, and towns that are marked as dysfunctional will number hundreds of independent parliament representatives. Newsreader, the before-mentioned list of localities includes. Wait, what? Three Stones is on the list? I forgot to chew. I wonder if Sister Judith is aware. Well, look at that. Careful what you wish for, I guess. Just when I thought I was trapped in a backwater place. Newsreader, our sources indicate that some of the investigated complaints against illegal actions of the agencies. Complaints? Who would be able to send one, I wonder? A good half of the village wasn't members of the parish, but as far as I remembered, the commune never ran into conflicts with seculars. Was 6 years enough to change this so much? Newsreader, abuse of the ranks, excess of power, extremist cults activities and human trafficking. Big talk. The bigger they are, the less they resemble the truth, though. Wait, does the cameraman actually record a computer screen? What's this, a Stone Age? Let's see, what's in the recommended section? Try not to laugh challenge. Oh come on, TV people. Newsreader, small settlements with locally elected officials and leaders which authority is formal at best quite often are more likely to succumb to said dangers. Newsreader, experts dub this phenomenon, Le Sueur syndrome, a tendency resulting in discarding the common human values in favor of local beliefs, be those religious or ideological, and the assembly's duty is to make sure nothing of the kind takes place. Newsreader, in case of malpractices being revealed, restrictive measures will be forced and decided upon on a local level for each individual case. Newsreader, in addition to that, the Assembly allocated a share of allowance which will be used on providing financial and psychological assistance to the victims of violence. Sounds extremely ludicrous. Sure, Three Stones isn't a heaven on earth, but no place is. Today was a long and weird day. I undressed and laid myself on a narrow and stone-hard bed. The berth on the train was hard too, but at least you know it's not for long. And for this bed my body is yet to be shaped. I always open the book before sleep. Come to think of it, it's not unlike a fortune-telling, when you try the pages, expecting to find ties and echoes of the things that happen around you, and the more you seek, the more you come across. You look for guiding stars, hints on what can await you next. Unavoidably wishing that it's something good. And thou hast removed my soul far off from peace, I forget prosperity. And I said, my strength and my hope is perished from the Lord, remembering mine affliction and my misery, the wormwood, and the gall. My soul hath them still in remembrance, and is humbled in me. This I recall to my mind, therefore have I hope. It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning, great is thy faithfulness. Wind, in the Trees, Chapter 1.
Okay, that's a good place to call it for now. So, yeah, the plot thickens. Something's gonna go on in, Three Stones there. So, yeah, it definitely seems like an interesting, lead up to whatever is gonna happen. I kind of want to see what'll happen, but I don't think I'll be able to stream it. So, yeah, there's that. But anyway, till next time.